So now I've got my vector. What I'm going to try and do is take the image from Illustrator through to Photoshop. So to do that, I'm going to grab the whole thing, which is done by drawing over the drawing, and then selecting Command G, which will group it, Command C, which will copy it, and now I can close Illustrator or reduce Illustrator and now move towards Photoshop. So I'm now in Photoshop, and I'm now going to go Command V, which will drop the image in as a smart object. Now, smart object is a vector, and that means it can be resized using maths, not pixels. So if I press the Option button, I can zoom it in and out. Now, not too big, because otherwise your textures you get off the internet may not stay with clarity, although you could take your own photographs and bring your own textures in. So I'm going to go for kind of mid-size on A3, but hopefully that will work. Once you're happy with that, just press Return, and that sets it. And then over here, you need to convert your vector smart object into a rasterized object, which returns it from a vector graphic to pixels. So to do that, you'll need to press Control at the same time as pressing over here, and that will give you a drop menu. And then you just scroll down and go Rasterized Layer. So that's now a pixel image, and I'm just going to rename it and call it Peg, which means I'll be able to refer to it from this very small faded menu when I'm working. The next thing I'm going to do is bring in some new layers, and I'm going to paste some textures which I've got in a folder on my desktop, which I can then use. So today I'm going to be working with glass textures. I've got this kind of heavy glass texture here, but I've also got this slightly lighter one here. I'm going to use this one, place it, possibly enlarge it. Again, if you press the Option button, it will enlarge. You can see whether it's pixelating too much, but I want to kind of be able to cover whole areas maybe. So I'm just going to see what happens when I press Return on that. And that seems to have kept most of its clarity. It's not perfect. You can see it's slightly pixelating here, but it's fine. And what I want to do as well is I want a few of those. So I want to kind of be able to save this glass texture over and over again. Now it's on my copy button, so I could just paste another one in, which I might do, but also I might just have a spare one up my sleeve where I can just paste that new layer in. Sorry, File, Place Embedded, go to that glass texture again and place it again. So that's two glass textures within that file. Now you'll spot as well that they need to be turned into rasterized objects. So to do that, again, you press on Control, drop down menu, and then rasterize. The other way I could have done it is to drag this layer and put it into layers down there, and that would give me another version of it as well. So turn those two off, and then what we want to be able to do is see the drawing underneath here. So to do that, what you do is drop the opacity down so you can then see the visual underneath, but you can still see the texture that you're working with. And then we're going to be working between layers. So we're going to use the Peg layer to be able to select, using the Magic Wand tool, certain areas of our drawing. And then we're going to use the glass texture layer to delete all the other stuff around it, so we can then start to get that texture applied around all the surfaces of the design. So first things first, number one, I want to resize and re-edit this glass texture. So to do that, just press deselect. To do that, I want to be working on that layer, and then I want to go Command T. Now Command T means transform, and that will allow me to adjust this layer. If you press the Command button at the same time as moving the object around, you'll find this is it without the pressing Command button. This is it pressing the Command button, and it allows you to tilt and distort the design or the layer into perspective around your object. So all I'm doing now is just dragging this texture and making it in a way sit flat. So it's not sitting flush on the face of the screen, it's now sitting flat on top of this peg. So I've now done that. I just press Return, and that kind of sets that glass texture in motion. But now I kind of want to delete all these areas and bits around the edge. So to do that, there's two really simple ways of doing it. You could either go in there with your rubber, or your polygon tool, and you can sit there clicking along all these lines and try to do that and then delete. Again, remember to work on the glass texture layer, so you could delete it like that. That's quite a long-winded way. There's a really quick way of doing it, and this is the reason why we did the closed forms within Illustrator, these solid black shapes with a solid line around them, because it allows you to use a magic wand. You can just press, go back to your peg layer, press on the layer, press your finger on the shift button, add that layer. So these two sections are now selected, and if I go to selection inverse, it's now selected everything apart from those two layers. And if I now go back to my glass textured layer and press delete, I can then delete all of that other excess information. Command D drops away the selection, deselects it, and now I can start working on all the other ones. So I'm just going to do that on all the other layers as well, using different parts of the texture, different layers of glass and stuff, and start to add glass over the top of the whole peg. So here goes. So this is a new layer again. Command T allows me to make it bigger. Command Now what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to flip it so it's working the complete opposite direction. So I'm going to get dark edges working off dark edges. Hopefully that might help me. And then just to help me a little bit, I'm also going to drop the opacity down so I can see through the peg. Going a little bit beyond just so I get that contrast so the colours aren't going to necessarily match. And again, now I'm happy with that. I think that's going to be fairly nice in terms of its layer and its texture and stuff. I'm now going to press return to set it, go back to my peg, select the areas that I want to be made looking like glass, selection inverse, and then go back to my new glass layer, which is number 2, and just press delete, gets rid of all that other information. And then you might be thinking, well, Mr. Campbell, that's looking all right, but it's a bit faded. Well, it's because the opacity is still down. So actually, if we go to these glass layers and bring the opacity up, we can add a bit more of that kind of contrast and texture that we had before. So I'm just going to carry on working on all the bits of glass and add some more of the bits and then come back to you in a moment. Now for this bit, I'm actually going to use a paintbrush or a piece of metal texture. So I'm going to go back to my peg and just try and grab the peg section. But I'm just going to preempt that by importing or embedding brush steel, which I'm going to use for that. I'm going to go back to my, just going to transform that brush steel and make it a bit smaller. And now go back to my peg, use a selection tool to select all those areas that would be brush steel. Go back to that, selection inverse, then press delete again. But again, you've got to make it a rasterized layer. It's good this happens because it means you see me getting it wrong, trying to get it right again. You've got to make a rasterized layer to be able to delete it. And now bring the opacity of that back up. We've got kind of steel within the peg. Last two bits, just going to quickly do them. And now we've got the peg all covered in glass. And now what we can do is we can start to go in and just start to refine some of this drawing. Now it's not absolutely perfect, I'm not pretending it is, but within this, one of the tools you can use is the burn tool and the dodge tool. So the burn tool, again, you can set your brushes to a reasonable size. The burn tool would allow you to add a little bit of texture to this bit of steel. Now we're just using it. I've got a soft edge. I'll go back to the brush settings again. I've got a brush of about 6-7 pixels and a hard, and it's really soft. It's not got any hardness to it. So what that's allowing me to do is just on this one layer, just with the metal, add a little bit of texture. And because I knew that on this bit it was going to be darker, I could make that dark. Now if I felt that it was spreading out too far onto the edge of the peg, I could have made a selection on that as well. And if there's light on somewhere, you might want to add a bit of lightness as well. So again, if you come over here, you can go to the dodge tool, just shrink that down a little bit so I've got a bit more control. And again, what that would do is just lighten areas of this top bit, just to try and get that contrast, try and make that thing feel a little bit more 3D. So again, the texture is giving us a sense of materiality, and the light falling is doing that. Now you can do the same with the glass textures as well. So just try and work out which one you're working on. I'm working on those end ones. If I come to here, again, just go to this dodge and burn tool. Maybe on this one I'll make it a little bit bigger. And then just kind of work along, just burning those edges, trying to build up that contrast. Now because there's quite a lot of nice colour in there, just been thinking about where the light source is coming from, but I'm just adding a bit of contrast and just bringing out some of those colours. Might be a bit much, but we'll see what happens. Try and work out which layer you're working on again. Just slide up and down, turn them off and turn them on again. So I'm now going to work on this side layer. And again, I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger, get this all done a bit quicker for you. So in there, I'm just going to burn in to try and bring in that value, work along this edge, just to add a bit more texture. Again, just little things just to kind of break up the monotony of that first bit of glass. And what you can do is just dip between layers. So if you just press the command button in between actions and stuff, you'll see that the menu for the layers is moving around as I do it. So press command, click on the drawing, it will give you the area that you want to be working on. And on this, I'm going to try and make this bit really quite nice and dark. And this bit would all be in shadow as well. But the nice thing is it's all coming from a kind of glass starting point. Obviously missed a little bit there, which we'll have to deal with. Just going to work on that edge. Now it's half in that one and half not. And I'm now going to have to just mend this little bit by working on that original drawing, the peg. Work into there, and I'm just going to colour that in black because it's obviously a bit of a mistake. So go to my paintbrush, choose black and just colour it in, deselect. Just want to try and burn that little bit in there where the shadow would be. Again, go back to the peg drawing, maybe select this little area here which I've also forgotten, just colour it in black. And this little bit of blue here, I can actually select that bit of blue by again going into the peg drawing. And what I'm going to do just before I do that is I'm just going to quickly join all the layers together. So image, so I'm going to join the glass textures and the steel textures and everything together. So I'm selecting them, and then I'm going to go layer, merge layers, and that's kind of unified those. Doing the same on this one, image, layers, merge layers. So now all the textures are in the same thing. I'm not actually using that one, but what that would allow me to do is when I'm working on the peg bit and trying to add in this little bit of detail here on the peg, I can now go and copy using the clone tool apart from elsewhere within the design. So on the clone tool, just click on it, click on a part of the drawing on the same layer that you want, and then what you should be able to do, so I've used the selection from the previous one, I've gone for the brush tool, I press Option at the time of clicking, and then that allows me to put that texture and colour in there. I'm actually going to lighten it a bit so it's more in line with the other ones. Command D deselects it. Okay, there we go. A coloured peg, slightly with glass textures and those kind of things. Hope that makes sense. I look forward to seeing what you do and what you come up with. Good luck.